Assalamu alaikum, this is Brother Hameed back again with the Muslim Empowerment Institute. For those who are not aware, the month of June is what they call Pride Month, okay? And it's not proud to be black, it's not proud to be an American, it's not even proud to be alive, okay? It's the LGBTQ month for those individuals who participate in the associating alternative lifestyle. I'll say it like that. Now, why am I talking about this? I'm talking about this because several Muslim scholars from the West signed a document recently detailing the Muslim response to this Pride Month, which I'll leave in the description area. It's titled Navigating Differences, Clarifying Sexual and Gender Ethics in Islam. So I'm going to go through this document, let me pull it up here, and get some commentary. So let's get into this. So it starts off, public discourse on sexuality over the past few decades has presented challenges to faith communities. Today, Islamic sexual and gender ethics are at odds with certain recently popular societal views, causing tension for Muslims between their religious beliefs and societal expectations. At the same time, public disapproval of LGBTQ practices, beliefs, and advocacy is increasingly met with charges of intolerance and unwarranted accusations of bigotry. More troubling still, there is an increasing push to promote LGBTQ-centric values among children through legislation and regulations disregarding parental consent and denying both parents and children the opportunity to express conscientious objection. Such policies subvert the agency of Muslim parents to teach their children their religiously grounded sexual ethics, violate their constitutional right to freely practice their religion, and contribute to an atmosphere of intolerance toward faith communities. We are Muslim scholars and preachers representing a diverse range of theological schools, and below is our collective, nonpartisan articulation of Islam's position on sexual and gender ethics as a religious minority that frequently experiences bigotry and exclusion. We reject the notion that moral disagreement amounts to intolerance or incitement of violence. We affirm our right to express our beliefs while simultaneously recognizing our constitutional obligation to exist peacefully with those whose beliefs differ from ours. Then they talk about the source of morality for Muslims. The most essential requirement for accepting Islam is to submit to God completely, voluntarily, and lovingly. God says it's not for a believing man or woman, when God and his messenger decree a matter, to have any other choice in that matter. It's a verse from the Quran. By submitting to God, we declare that only He, Allah, possesses absolute knowledge and wisdom. Therefore, it follows from this submission that the ultimate source and basis of morality is divine guidance, not just reason or societal trends. Islam enjoys a rich tradition of jurisprudence that allows for diverse perspectives and accommodates various cultural norms. However, particular principles that are explicitly stated in Revelation, known to be necessary elements of Islam, and unanimously agreed upon by qualified scholars, are deemed immutable and not open to revision by any person or entity, including the highest religious authorities. As God asserts, and the word of your Lord has been fulfilled in truth and justice. None can alter his words, and he is the all-hearing and the all-knowing. Verse from the Quran. Now they're talking about Islam's position on sexuality and gender. By decree from God, sexual relations are permitted within the bounds of marriage. A marriage contract, basically. A marriage can only occur between a man and a woman. Case closed. In the Quran, God explicitly condemns sexual relations with the same sex. Another verse from the Quran. Moreover, premarital and extramarital sexual acts are prohibited in Islam. As God explains, do not go near fornication. It is truly an immoral deed and a terrible way. Another verse from the Quran. These aspects of Islam are unambiguously established in the Quran, the teachings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and a chain of scholarly tradition spanning 14 centuries. As a result, they have gained the status of religious consensus, ijma', and are recognized as integral components of the faith known to the general body of Muslims. God defined humanity as consistent of males and females and declared that he created humans from a male and a female and made them into people and tribes so that you may come to know one another. Another verse from the Quran. Islam affirms that men and women are spiritually equal before God, even though each has different characteristics and roles. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, referred to women as equivalent counterparts of men. Yet he, peace be upon him, explicitly condemned imitating the appearance of the opposite gender. Further, God calls on humanity to respect his wisdom in creation. Another verse from the Quran. As such, as a general rule, Islam strictly prohibits medical procedures intended to change the sex of healthy individuals, regardless of whether such procedures are termed gender-affirming or confirming. For individuals born with biological ambiguities, such as disorders of sexual development, Islam permits them to seek medical care for corrective reasons. All right. So in other words, we don't agree with liberals trying to give children the right to decide to mutilate their genitals, or to take puberty blockers which destroy your body without their parents' consent and without their parents even knowing about it. And we don't believe an adult has the right to mutilate his genitals either. You know, the same liberals who were fighting against the female genital mutilation in places like Africa seem to not have a problem with mutilating their own confused, brainwashed children in America. I find that interesting. To continue, Islam distinguishes between feelings, actions, and identity. God holds individuals accountable for their words and actions, not for their involuntary thoughts and feelings. As our Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, said, God has pardoned Muslims for what they think, as long as they do not speak of or act on it. It's a hadith. In Islam, the sinful actions of an individual do not and should not dictate his or her identity. As such, it is impermissible for Muslims to take pride in identifying with labels that categorize them by their sins. This is very important. This is very important right here. For people who participate in this alternative lifestyle, which they would like to normalize, they need to know that there's more to them than their sexual preference. That's really crazy when you think about it. That the summation of their existence is limited to who they're attracted to. That's all social engineering. To continue, it is important to note that the stance of Islam on illicit sexual relations goes hand in hand with its protection and promotion of the individual's right to privacy. Islam prohibits prying into others' private lives and discourages public discourse of sexual behavior. Verse from the Quran. If people want to do this stuff, why do you have to broadcast it? And why do you have to be proud about it? If you keep it to yourself, no one will be bothered. That's between you and your Lord. To continue, we recognize that some religious groups have reinterpreted or revised religious doctrine to be inclusive of LGBTQ ideology. The Muslim community is not immune to such pressures. Indeed, some have attempted to reinterpret Islamic texts in favor of LGBTQ affirmation. We categorically reject such efforts as theologically indefensible because these aspects of sexual ethics fit within the category of immutable tenets and are therefore not subject to revision. Exactly. So if a Muslim says that this lifestyle is permissible, he or she is a disbeliever, period. It doesn't make you a disbeliever to participate in this lifestyle, provided you affirm that this lifestyle is not permissible. But if you affirm it and say this is how God made me, and you can't say I can't love who I want to love, then that's a disbeliever talking, period. Period, point blank. Now they're talking about our constitutional right to hold our views. We recognize that our moral code conflicts with the goals of LGBTQ proponents. We also acknowledge their constitutional right to live in peace and free from abuse. Nevertheless, we emphasize our God-given and constitutional rights to hold, live by, and promote our religious beliefs in the best manner, from the verse from the Quran, without fear of legal reprisal or systematic marginalization. Okay. Now, the real goal of these Rainbow Coalition folks is to normalize this type of stuff, not for adults, but for children. You have some of these books which magically found its way into school libraries all across the country, targeted to children, and no one knows how they got there, where they came from. And they had, the books with the families comprised of 2 dads and their kids, and some of these books were outright pornographic. So when you had the liberal argument that conservatives are banning books about black history and banning the teaching of critical race theory in schools across the country, then you have to understand what they're actually trying to prevent children from learning. So-called queer theory is a part of critical theory. So I can see why they're trying to ban, this type of stuff from the schools. That's why soon you won't be able to have your kids in public schools at all, for real. They continue, peaceful coexistence does not necessitate agreement, acceptance, or affirmation, promotion, or celebration. We refuse the false choice between succumbing to social pressures to adopt views contrary to our beliefs or facing unfounded charges of bigotry. Such coercive ultimatums undermine prospects for harmonious coexistence. So basically, if you want to do that lifestyle in a secular environment, you can do your thing, but keep it to yourself. And don't try to force it on us and our children, and try to force us to accept it. They said, we call on policymakers to protect our constitutional right to practice our religious beliefs freely, Ilhan Omar, Keith Ellison, Rashida Tlaib, without fear of harassment, and to oppose any legislation seeking to stifle the religious freedoms of faith communities. Now I see Ilhan Omar and Keith Ellison and Rashida Tlaib, whom are Democrats and are also Muslims, advocating for these other folks, bending over backwards, pun intended, for these other folks, but I wonder, are they advocating for the religious freedoms of all faith communities, specifically the one that they claim to be a part of? They continue. Consistent with our claim of nonpartisanship, we are committed to working with individuals of all religious and political affiliations to protect the constitutional right of faith communities to live according to their religious convictions and to uphold justice for all. Now, this is real interfaith here. To my immigrant brothers and sisters advocating for our religious rights and for the right to reject the values that contradict our faith, not just having interfaith talks and Ramadan iftars just because. They continue. To our Muslim community, we urge Muslim public figures to uphold the sanctity of our faith and refrain from making erroneous pronouncements on behalf of Islam. We reject any attempt to attribute positions to Islam concerning sexual and gender ethics that contravene well-established Islamic teachings. To be clear, we cannot overstate the detrimental spiritual consequences for those who intentionally reject, advocate the rejection of, or misrepresent the will of God, as in doing so they endanger their status as believers. I just mentioned that. And this is a general principle in Islam. The rule is any belief, action, or saying which belittles Allah and His Messenger, His angels, His rights, the well-known established practices of Islam, His rules, His promise, or His threat, is kufr, is disbelief, period, point blank. So to those amongst us who struggle with desires to fall outside the boundaries set by God, know that even the most righteous can commit sins, and that every Muslim, no matter how sinful, has the potential to be forgiven. Practicing self-restraint and devotion to God is considered heroic. Its spiritual reward increases proportionally within the level of struggle involved. Our ultimate purpose is to prioritize devotion to God over our desires and not sacrifice our faith. We pray to God to grant us the necessary strength and unwavering commitment to live up to our ideals. May we find inner peace and satisfaction through love and submission, and may God deem us worthy of being counted among the believers, the most honorable of titles. All right. So that's the end of the document. There's a host of signatories on the documents, and the signatories keep increasing, which is a good thing. Like I said, I'll leave it in the description area. So I don't want to beat a dead horse. It's pretty self-explanatory. We're at the point now where we're going to have to reject media and turn off the TV. Now imagine watching TV with your kid and commercial, and a commercial will have two men or two women showing each other affection. How are we going to explain that to your kids? How are you going to explain that? I remember this little guy, Lil Nas X, had this song called Old Time Road, or something like that. And it seemed like it was a catchy tune that the kids listened to a lot. So I didn't hear anything else from this dude. I thought he was just going to be joining the long list of the one-hit wonders. Then one day, I was scrolling through my YouTube subscriptions, and this singer, Lil Nas X, showed up in my subscriptions. And there's no way I would have subscribed to this dude. So I clicked on the video, and the dude was rapping and dancing with a bunch of dudes butt naked in jail. Seriously. I couldn't believe it. So I asked someone else about it, and they said the same thing happened to them. That somehow, way or another, that they just automatically got subscribed to this guy and saw that video. I quickly unsubscribed to that. Just think how many children were automatically subscribed to this guy. They're coming for our children. And their agenda is to normalize this type of lifestyle, which is just the beginning of them accepting this lifestyle is valid, and then finally participating in this lifestyle. You know, how many years away are we from Sodom and Gomorrah? Seriously. You know, we have to remember what Allah revealed in the Quran. You, believers in Islam, are the best of people ever raised up for mankind. You enjoin al-ma'ruf, tawheed, and all the obligations in Islam. And you forbid al-munkar, shirk, disbelief, and all the stuff that Islam has forbidden. And you believe in Allah. Muslims got to remember this. Muslims got to remember this when you go vote for these folks who you think are so accepting and friendly to us as Muslims. We got to remember what Allah said, and that we need to be friends with Allah and not be friends with those who oppose Allah and His Messenger. We got to think about this. It's getting real crazy out here with these rainbow folks. And for those people who may be struggling with same-sex attraction, having the desire to do this stuff doesn't make you a participant unless you are actually participating in the stuff that they do. So don't act on it. If your coworker said something crazy to you and you wanted to slap her, that doesn't make you violent, unless of course you actually slap her. You know, fight those whispers of the shaitan. And for those who have family members, cousins, siblings, children, or parents that are a part of the Rainbow Coalition, pray for them. If you cast them out, remember that someone in the Rainbow Coalition is waiting for them with open arms. Wrong is wrong. Don't give in to the shaitan and say it's their choice and it's okay and it's not haram. You're gonna fall into kufr, disbelief. To go against what Allah has said is going to make you fall into disbelief. Islam is not Christianity, where you can say you accept anything under the sun and still be a Christian. If you claim to be a Muslim and you say what Allah has prohibited is okay, then that's disbelief in what Allah has said. You can't cherry pick and choose. It's not a buffet. But in closing, brothers and sisters, I want you to know, especially with this issue, stuff may happen to you that may be outside of your control. You know, you have to decide that this bad thing that may have happened is not going to control my life. Remember, Allah does not change the condition of people until they change what is within themselves. If a Muslim sees something wrong, he stops it with his hand. If he can't do that, if it's not within his capacity, he speaks out against it. And if he can't do that, he just rejects it in his heart. And that's the least of faith. Okay? So that's it. Please like, share, and subscribe. Until the next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.